You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows like the one you're about to enjoy, visit electronicmediacollective.com. And now, our feature presentation.
Howdy do, buckaroos, and welcome to Comics with My Kids Podcast, the official podcast for the comicscornerbox.blogspot.com. I'm your host, Matt D., and with me today is...
Logan D. and Richard S.
Welcome, listeners, to our 7th installment for the summer reading promotion. We are reviewing Cat Kid Comic Club Book 2 by Dav Pilkey, and as you heard, we have a special guest discussing with us today about Cat Kid Comic Club.
Hey guys, glad to be here. I'm ready to put a catapult into this book. Ready to catapult.
Sweet, well, let's start it up.
Okay.
Richard, how about you give us a summary of the story?
Okay, here's the story. So, this is the Tadpole's second week of Cat Kid, or of the comic club, and they already have fights at the very beginning with Naomi and Melvin, and so they end up fighting, and as they keep going, they're still mad at each other nonstop. But then these two think of a good name for the comic book, Time Wasters. And they already finished the cover, and then their lesson is about perspectives. And the one just yells out boring, and then Cat Kid shows how cool perspectives can really be.
So what do you think of perspectives, Richard?
Perspectives to me are like ways to like see things bigger instead of like just seeing it boring. Like a perspective helps like come out more. Sort
of like a 3D view of it. Okay. What about you, Logan? What do you think about perspectives?
I like it because I think it makes it more pop.
Okay.
It's like wearing 3D glasses and watching a movie, but on paper.
Okay. Well, then what happens next?
So after that, and they figure it out how to do it. They all make really cool ones, and then one figures out that it doesn't have to go into infinity. That just draw a line across, erase the bottom, and it's just like bold and non-infinity. But then Naomi and Melvin keep fighting, and Melvin eventually gets mad about Naomi because Naomi used all of his eraser when they're drawing about the perspectives.
Yeah. Don't they get into a fight?
Yeah. And then, Flippy comes over and he gets all crazed out about told them to switch seats so they don't have to argue. While Naomi has to go and sit on the timeout log, and she's acting like everything's fine.
Gotcha.
Then they were told to not goof around for the very next day, which is exactly what did not happen the very next day. As they all go crazy playing cards, blowing bubbles, eating pencils, taping each other, throwing paper airplanes, putting feet in each other's face, etc. And so then Flippy said that they promised to not goof off, which they did. So he threatened them by saying, you instead of like spending the rest of the day doing the comic club, they could just do chores."
Gotcha. Kind of sounds familiar to some other people that like get into fights and stuff, right?
Yeah. Like me and my brother.
You and your brother, yeah. What about you? And what about Logan and Melody? Don't you guys get into lots of arguments and stuff?
Ours are a bit aggressive.
Okay. Well, can you scoot a little closer to the microphone?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
So, then we are introduced to our first comic, Time Wasters of Time. So their teacher told them they wanted these two certain kids, or Felix and Jax, to write a report on the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, which were in Chicago, or near Chicago. And then they figured out a way to go back in time, prevent it from happening, so there's nothing they have to write about. And so they said to go 2 hours before it happened. So they went back in time 2 hours before it happened. And so since it was 2 hours before it happened, they decided to just play on their phone. And at 8:26, they finally beat the game, but then it had to update and there's no Wi-Fi, so they freak out, go back in the time machine, leave, and right when they leave, the fire starts.
No, them leaving started the fire. Because the way the time machine works, it spits out a bit of sparks and then disappear. 2 of the sparks landed in just the right spot that started the Great Chicago Fire.
So then they go back to the present time, and they gave the report to the teacher, and they said it was very, 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 very boring, and there was no Wi-Fi. Boo. The end. That was their report, and then they ended up getting an F, and then that was the end of their comic.
Interesting.
And Flippy said it was very interesting, and the one said it was educational. Flippy argued, saying it was not educational, and then he said, and then he decided to prove it. And asked one of the tadpoles, Pedro, where did it take place? Chicago, which was pretty obvious, and it was educational. And then we are introduced to our second one, Chubbs McSpiderbutt.
Oh, I like Chubbs McSpiderbutt from the first and third book.
Funny. Yeah. So, Chubbs is just walking around one day, had a regular butt, then a spider named Jack bit his butt because he accidentally sat on him, and then he grew a spider butt, and very awkwardly, but then they decided to become friends, sounds like superheroes, be like a different version of Spider-Man, kinda, which they could do.
Right.
By the way, it's Jake, not Jack.
Oh, sorry. And then they ended up having their own van, and the van has it all. It's got Smiley Face Grill, Froyo Smoothie Station, indoor disco dance studio, and they said they could all be heroes and that Jake could be his sidekick. But then some van that's kind of like a spaceship comes in, and the person who's driving it is named Dr. Pasty McSprinkles, Supreme Leader, and he's the Supreme Leader of the NVNC, which is the Not Very Nice Club.
Ah, yes. So just real quickly, the Spider McButt, is it drawn?
No, it's not drawn. It's mainly like they use real life objects and then like took pictures of it.
Okay.
And then they like printed it out, and then they just put word bubbles.
Okay, cool. So it's like a picture comic.
Yeah.
So how do we get into the whole Spider McButt? I mean, is it just these are all the, if I remember right, are these all the books that the tadpoles or frogs are doing?
Yeah. So the whole point of the comic club was like them to like make their own comic books for fun and like a chance for it to get published.
Gotcha.
And so they start working hard trying to get their comics good.
Okay.
And well, so that's how they come up with like Chubbs McSpiderbutt. They use real pictures to make it look better instead of like drawing it out, because not everyone's good at drawing. So
Okay.
they used that.
So how does the Chubbs McSpiderbutt story end?
So it ends as so the Dr. Pacey McSprinkles also has a sidekick named Scott, and Scott is like a fuzzy worm.
Okay.
That's technically the height of a human, or at least in the comic book. And Scott is not that very good at the NVNC, Not Very Nice Club, because for some reason he keeps being nice, like saying, like he's supposed to say mean things to them. Instead, he says the mean things to his leader.
Gotcha.
And then they always get mad.
Like, what's the example of?
The example here is that he said to his leader, "Your breath is stinky."
Why did he say that?
Well, because he needed to focus, and well, that was the only thing he could think of in that time. Is like, your breath is stinky.
Gotcha.
And then it's more funny.
All right. Well, Logan, why don't you take over and tell us the next book in the story?
So then it moves on to the next day, and they make a sequel book called Supa-Fail 2.
Okay.
And the world has been rebuilt by a kid named Supa-Fail who had destroyed it, and he had terribly taped the earth back together.
With like Scotch tape?
Yep.
I don't even know how you tape a world back together.
Well, you know.
That is his definition of a circle.
Oh, nice.
But also,
it's all like mismatched and
yeah.
Like the top, like
how do you get tape big enough is the real question.
Oh, good point.
And when he had it in his hand, that means his hand is like barely smaller than the earth.
Yep.
So it's just messed up, but yeah.
And what's funny is the North Pole is on the bottom of the earth.
Oh my goodness.
And he put Ohio at the top. So then, what's next, Logan?
And so then, the evil person, which is an old lady, goes to terrorize the earth.
Okay, why is she terrorizing the earth?
Because she doesn't like Supa-Fail.
Oh, okay.
And she uses a computer to terrorize it. A giant computer with big footprints.
Isn't it like a polluting computer?
Well, it has smog, toxic waste, and greenhouse gas.
So yeah, that sounds like a polluting computer.
Pretty much does.
And it has a carbon footprint.
Oh, is that why it has the giant feet? So it has a giant carbon footprint?
Yep.
Nice.
And how does he stop it?
He makes it step on carbon tax.
Oh, ha, I get it.
It falls off a cliff.
But the cliff doesn't end so well, does it?
Nope, it lands into a nuclear power plant.
Oh no, I wonder what's going to happen. We find out though in episode or book 3, don't we?
And hopefully the world doesn't explode again and Supa-Fail has to tape it back horribly.
Hopefully not. All right, so what do you guys like about Cat Kid Comic Club?
I like it how it's just like little tadpoles that are like doing so well.
They're frogs, actually.
Yeah, but they're kind of tadpoles.
Molly's the only tadpole.
And it's kind of funny how all their stories are.
Mhm.
Like some make funny comic books like Supa-Fail, and others make it like realistic, like Chub's Big Spider Butt.
Okay.
That's what makes it look really cool and really funny.
Awesome. What about you, Logan? What do you like best about Cat Kid Comic Club?
I like how they were all learning perspective, and one kid took it farther and used perspective in his comic book.
Awesome. Now, the little books, they're just like little stories within the overall story of Cat Kid Comic Club. How does this book lead into the third book? What surprise event happens that we find out for book 3?
Well, when the book finishes, it shows a bit of things at the end, and it says that special guests are coming.
Which could be some people, if you ever read the Dogman book, someone very important, like a news person.
You can tell by the silhouette who it is.
Gotcha.
Yeah, when I read this, I was excited for the next book to come out, like see how this person would be useful.
Gotcha.
I got the first book, the third book, and the fourth book.
But why not the second?
I don't know. I was gifted the third book and the fourth book.
So, But we were able to borrow the second book from the library so that he was able to read it for the podcast. He wanted to come back and listen and review it. So now here we are. So Logan, is there anything else you want to include about the Cat Kid comic book, book 2, or about the series itself?
Well, the one comic is about Baby Flippy, but with some other things. So it was based off of a true story.
Okay.
So yeah, when I read the Baby Flippy story, it's kind of like a very like lots of twists and turns like you would expect.
Gotcha. What about you, Richard? Is there anything else you want to include about book 2?
To me, book 2, I think is probably like the best Cat Kid book so far.
Okay.
How much more, like how many stories there are, and like how Naomi and Melvin are like still fighting,
Mm-hmm.
but then they're kind of actually starting to be best buds.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would say, if I remember right, all those frogs, there's like, what, 24 frogs? They're all brothers and sisters, so that's a lot of squabbling and fighting for Flippy to have to raise all those kids.
But then when you read the book, only like 2 fight, which is pretty amazing. How only 2.
That is pretty amazing. So, what mini comic was your guys' favorite? I'm going to ask Richard first. What was your favorite mini comic in there?
Mine would probably be Supa-Fail too.
Okay.
Because it was really funny how it's like how the world is tamed, and then how it's like all of a sudden this old lady, her plan was to basically steal a toothpick, and her plan was foiled, and she got all bad about a toothpick, so which was really just funny. And then how she just makes a machine that pollutes the whole earth is like, wow, I didn't know you could do that. And then how Supa-Fail just stops him with tax. And which lands in a nuclear
power plant.
Yeah.
Okay. Logan, what was your favorite mini comic in the book?
I liked the one called Baby Frog Squad.
Baby Frog Squad. What was Baby Frog Squad?
I liked it because they had taken things and like made it. Like for the frogs, they had taken like clay and made the frogs and took them.
Oh, okay. Pictures. So it's another one of those not drawn but like a multimedia kind of
like Chubb's Big Spider Bot.
Okay, cool.
Like Chubb's Big Spider Bot, it's like action figures. Here it's like clay and cardboard, which makes it really cool too.
Awesome. Well, I think if it teaches you guys anything, is that if you're interested in making comic books, you could do it with anything really, whether you're taking photographs or drawing it yourself. It only limits you to how much your imagination is.
When I was in second grade, one of my friends, we started making a comic book because we were like best friends.
Mm-hmm.
So us two started making it, but then it was like so we were like 3/4 of the way through the school year, and when we started making it, we had lots of trouble in the way. Like we had to do lots of things, and we eventually barely got any time. What sucks the most is that we never finished it.
Gotcha.
And after second grade, I had to go to a whole different school, so I never got to see him. But this kind of is like the Cat Kid Comic Club is really cool. How like the other kids make their comics and how you could also do it too.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right. Well, we have a rating here at the Comics Corner box. I'm sorry, at the Comics My Kids podcast, and it is buy, borrow, or bust. And basically, from what you've read, would you recommend someone buy it, borrow it, or forget about it? So I'll go ahead and give it to you, Logan. Where do you put the book? Is it a buy, borrow, or forget about?
I think it's a buy.
Okay. And why is it a buy?
Because it had really interesting stories that I would reread.
Okay. What about you, Richard? Where would you put the book?
Buy on how funny the whole story is. Like the storyline, it's like almost the whole book is like a joke book almost on how funny it is.
Gotcha. Well, I would agree with that. I definitely see it as a book that kids would read over and over again. A lot of really fun jokes, as Richard said, and the artwork is really neat, especially when it breaks down the different type of art styles, and it helps kind of teach kids on how to make their own comic books. So, yes, I would say it's a buy as well. Well, that's it for our episode of Cat Kid Comic Club Book 2. We'll go ahead and wrap this up then, boys. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, folks, thanks for listening to this episode thanks for listening to this episode of Comics with My Kids podcast. Check out more episodes at thecomicscornerbox.blogspot.com.
Leave us a rating or review at Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Podchaser.
Follow us on Twitter for all of our episode posts and news at Comics with Kids.
Also, check out our Facebook page, Comics with My Kids.
And finally, you can email our show at the Comics with My Kids podcast at gmail.com, and we'll put your name in the drawing for free comics.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of our summer reading promotion. Check out our website for the full list of this summer's books.
Good night.
Or morning, or afternoon, or between night and day.
Bye-bye.
And dawn and dusk.